businesses are going to find it easier to trade with EU partners. There's sort of tentative steps towards a youth mobility scheme. On the downside, of course, you've got the issue about extending the access of European boats into Scottish waters for fisheries. But if you look at the reaction of all of the business groups, it seemed to be largely positive. And if something was going to be really bad for the economy, you would expect the business organisations to be flagging this up. And I don't know what you think, John, but I think this is going to be, on balance, a popular deal with the public. I think they were longing for a reset, that they wanted a new relationship with the EU, and this is probably the first step in that endeavour.
Yeah, if anything, it's surprising that this hasn't come sooner, to be honest. I don't think it's any secret that Keir Starmer was never the biggest fan of Brexit. He did everything to try to guide his party into a more Europe-friendly position when he was in the shadow cabinet. I suspect in his heart of hearts, he knows that Britain would be better off back in the European Union. He obviously knows that that's politically not going to happen for now, but this is I think the first steps into essentially a soft Brexit position, and I would be surprised if we don't see, certainly under a Labour government, a creeping continuation of these sorts of policies that basically bring the UK more into line with the European Union, make it easier for businesses, etc. If you think back to Brexit, the main argument for Brexit was that somehow it would make us all richer, i.e. be good for the economy, and also there was this question of immigration, uncontrolled immigration. Now, obviously, there's been a lot of water under the bridge, but I don't think it will be 1 in 1,000 of that people in business leaders that will say that Brexit was good for the UK. I think it's obviously been a bad thing. And in terms of that immigration, we've seen uncontrolled immigration explode since then. So I don't think it's surprising that Keir Starmer's trying to gently ease the UK back onto speaking terms and better trading terms with the EU. And I hope he continues with that. It does appear, however, that in doing so, we're seeing one of Scotland's big industries, fishing, potentially suffer with this new deal. So that's going to cause issues. But really, I think overall, this is a good thing, and it'll be interesting now to see how the right-wing media who supported Brexit, the Reform Party, etc., respond.
Dougie, the right-wing press did cry betrayal. They think it's they think that it's an insult to people who voted for Brexit. But my experience of talking to people who voted for the UK to leave the EU is they wanted a pragmatic Brexit. And whatever you think about that decision, there were lots of things such as the Good Friday Agreement, Northern Ireland, trading issues that just weren't working properly. And do you not just sense that the British public are longing for responsible politicians to work constructively with our EU partners? And that's what they've got in this instance.
I think, kind of similar to the Scottish independence debate, you've probably got kind of 10-15% on either side that is very entrenched. So, and it's them that make the most noise. So, you had Remainers going on about how Brexit was going to be the worst thing ever and it was a complete disaster, which was untrue. It's not been the worst thing ever. And then you've got Brexiteers who say that any kind of relationship with the European Union is a betrayal. But of course, none of that was really set up. The country voted for Brexit. We left the European Union. That was that was what happened. That was the reality of the kind of situation. And I think it's been, I think people are tired, that kind of silent majority are tired of fighting this battle. That's kind of 10 years on. We're almost 10 years on from the Brexit referendum. And I think people are kind of fed up. And ultimately, the proof of this will be in a year's time, has it affected the pound in my pocket? Has it brought food prices down? I mean, I was talking to my wife about this yesterday. I still can't get my head around how much we're having to pay for food. You know, I know it's now like the norm, but it still seems incredible to me that food prices are so much higher than they were even just 5 years ago. And if in a year's time the man in the street has more money in his pocket, that's when they'll judge this kind of Brexit deal. I think it's been a good few weeks for Sir Keir Starmer. I know it's not often I would kind of concede that, but you know, given the kind of trade deal with India, the trade deal with America, it seems that, you know, on the international stage he's having a lot more success than he is on the domestic stage.
100%. I spoke to a relative and I said, look, isn't the Prime Minister doing well internationally? And the person said, how about folk back home? So he needs more good news, I think, on the domestic front.
Well, he's obviously the kind of winter fuel, kind of half a U-turn, I suppose. But ultimately, if it does, I've never really had an issue getting through passport control since Brexit. I don't really kind of recognise these kind of massive queues. But, you know, if your average punter sees a difference when they go on holiday, if they see a difference in food prices, the fisherman thing, I mean, it is disastrous for fishermen, but ultimately, John, you said it's one of Scotland's biggest industries, but UK-wide, it's only worth like 0.4% of, you know, GDP, and I think Sir Keir Starmer, if there's one thing he's proven since he came in, it's that he doesn't really care about upsetting people who won't vote Labour anyway, and I think this is another gamble, I suppose, that he thinks, well, if I upset the fishermen, it's not going to really impact on our electoral chances.